Hello and welcome to an Unreal Engine tutorial by Nebula Skull Studio. In this tutorial we'll be covering the basic functionality of my Procedural Dungeon Generator available on Unreal Marketplace. We'll also be tackling some of the frequently asked questions. To begin with, here we are in the example map for the Dungeon Generator with its first generation. And we can select it over here, and we have a lot of variables exposed over here to allow you to manipulate the generation. So room count sort of speaks for itself. We could tell it that we want 10 rooms and it'll generate 10 rooms. We can say that the minimum size for the room, and this is in tiles, is maybe 5 and the maximum size is 8. And we'll get different generations depending on those results. Merging, if we deselect this, you can see some rooms when they're really close together, merging allows those to merge into one room, and it just creates these interesting shapes and strange shaped rooms. It just adds a little bit more life to the dungeon. Floor culling, if you notice these sections where there's holes in the rooms, that's floor culling. We can turn that off over here, and you see that we just get nice square rooms, but the floor culling does add a little bit of depth to the dungeon again. It makes the rooms look a little bit more interesting. And you can change the minimum value and maximum value for floor culling, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't exceed 25% of a room's total tiles. If you wanted to generate a new dungeon using these settings, you can hit the new seed, and once it generates, it unchecks that boolean just so that you can generate at the click of a button as many times as you want until you get a result that you like. The scale is the scale of the tiles, each one of these individual floor tiles that's made up. I'll go into some detail in that in a moment when I explain how to switch the assets over. Allow spawn tiles, if we uncheck that, changes the dungeon into a wireframe so that we can see the debug lines, and it just gives us a better understanding of what's going on with the code in the background for when you come to manipulate all of that. Now we'll turn that off. The player spawn room index is the number room that the player will spawn in. This uses zero-based counting, so the room at the beginning at 0 will be 0, and then it will count up 1, 2, 3. So setting a maximum rooms of 10, it'll go 0 to 9. Beyond that, we have the texture settings for the included assets. Now, this is either you take it or you leave it. You're quite welcome to include your own assets, but for anybody that just wants to use the assets included for a simple overhead third-person game, you can change all of the colour, the contrast, the flatness of all these assets included in the pack, as well as for the caves. So if I scroll down here, we've got the enum here, so you can switch between dungeon and cave. And there we are. So as for saving these generations, we can take the seed on the right here, and we can copy that, and we can generate a new seed a few times. And then we can enter the seed back in that we had, and that'll give us the same configuration that we had, obviously depending on the other settings. This could be tied to UI on the front end of a game and a main menu, or you could tie it into the level progression if you wanted it to generate each time the level passes into a new level. You just want to adjust the seed, store the seed, and that can be done with save game objects. when you come to integrate this into a level yourself, it's quite easy to do. We'll just make a folder and we'll call it levels. And inside there, we'll create a level. In fact, we won't even do it this way. We'll create a level up here so that we can get an empty level. And we'll create that. Yeah, we'll save the selected. So now that we've got an empty level, what we want to do is save that. We'll save it in levels, and just for this case I'll call it L_tutorial dungeon. And now we have that level. So in here, what we want to do is open up the blueprint inside the Procedural Dungeon Generator folder. And we're going to throw a dungeon generator in, and we're just going to set its position to 0. And there we have it, a dungeon is in the level. But we won't be able to spawn in this yet, because we have no player starts. So just throw a couple of player starts in, and we'll hit for a new seed in the dungeon. And as part of the dungeon's code, it'll move these player starts into correct positions where you won't be facing the corner of a room, for example. And if we just hit new seed a few more times, you see that these player starts move around to where we want them. Now we'll get into the fun bit. We want to change the assets in this dungeon, and it's quite easy to do. We'll create a new folder, and I'd like to make some backrooms assets. In fact, we'll just call this mesh, and then inside mesh we'll create backrooms. Now I have a 3ds Max file open, and in here I've resized some of the assets from another game that I'm working on to be more suitable for the dungeon. The width of the floors, if I find the floor again, the width of the floors is 200 centimeters by 200 centimeters. The wall tiles are 200 centimeters wide. The door is 200 centimeters wide, and the column, I believe, is 20 centimeters or 30 centimeters for a column, which will sit quite nicely over the corners of the room. So I've already exported these, so we'll drag those into Unreal. So here we've got the FBX files for those assets that we've just looked at. I'm going to grab those and we're going to throw them into here. And we want to import all. And that's given us the assets that we want along with materials. And what we're going to do is jump back up to the content, and we're going to create a new folder for storing those materials. We're going to create a new folder for textures. We'll do most of this with Quixel Megascans using the Quixel bridge, but for now we want to be able to store textures because we're going to want the yellow wallpaper, so I'll pull in a texture for that, and the rest we should be able to do with the Quixel bridge. So what we're going to want to do is set these materials up for our assets. So first of all, let's open the Quixel bridge. With the Quixel bridge open, we're going to have a quick look for the plush carpet. There it is. And why not? We'll have the highest quality. Can we? Yeah, it's quicker just do this. So we'll add this to the project. and we have the plush carpet. And we're going to want the soundproof panels. No, tiles. Ah, there we are. Ceiling. This one. This is really good for the backgrounds. We're going to add that too. And there it is. And we're going to find some plaster. Just for the tops and bottoms of the walls. I think that's good. Plaster wall. We'll add that. Now that we have these in the project, we can jump back over to the mesh folder and open these up. So we have the wall trim, which we want to be plaster, and the wallpaper we'll get around to in a moment. The lobby floor, we want to be the plush carpet. The ceiling, we want to have those tiles. Yeah, we're starting to look good now. The pillar, the top and bottom of those is going to want to have that plaster again. And again, we'll get around to the wallpaper in a moment. And the same for this. Okay, so we're going to hit save on all of those for now. Minimise this for a moment. And then we'll jump over to the materials. So, we don't need the ceiling. We don't need the floor. And we don't need the trim. But we do want the wallpaper. So we want to import a texture for that wallpaper. So I'll just go and find one now. So I've found the lobby wallpaper from my hard drive, and we'll throw that in as a texture. We now have access to that, and we want to open up this material here. And make it a bit smaller so that we can move it around. Go to the textures, and we're going to slap that in there. Nice. Take the base colour, and we'll see how that looks on the assets. If we just hit a save for here. There we go. The lobby wall wallpaper is on there, but it's a little bit stretched and not in the best shape. So we're going to want to make an instance of it for each of these. So what we'll do is duplicate this and duplicate it again. Walls, wallpaper. I've got it for the door. And we've got it for the columns too. So we're going to want to open each of these. Now we've got all of these open, ready to adjust that texture. So what we're going to do is stretch the texture. So we want a texture coordinate, and just in case we need to apply some rotation, we can add a custom rotator on here. We're going to want a 2-vector. And we're going to want the first value at 0.5, the second value at minus 0.5, and that's going to plug into the rotation center. straighten this up. And we're going to want a scalar parameter, and we'll call this rotation angle. We'll slap that into the angle, and that just makes it easier for us to manipulate that in a bit. And we can plug this into UVs. Now, if we just apply that and make this smaller, what we're going to do is pull this over here. Just make it so that you guys can still see what's going on here. I'd normally do this over 2 monitors, but it's much easier for you guys to see like this. And we'll start with, what are we working on? The column. So let's grab the column, the inner outer corners. Now that we can see the texture, what we want to do is open this up so that we can adjust the tiling. So if we try 5 in here, apply. Yeah, this can take a little bit of messing about just to get the right scale. So I'll have a mess around here and find the correct settings for each of these, and I'll stop the recording again. Okay, and there we have the texture stretched in the right way for all 3 of these models. The door's a little bit warped, but it's only a tutorial, and I created these assets really fast just for the purpose of this. So that will do. We have the asset ready to drop into the level and generate. So we'll do that now. Let's just put all this back together and maximise that again. Make sure all of this is saved before we clear it out. Okay, so now we want to navigate to the blueprint for the dungeon generation. So b_dungeon gen, and here we are. Because we'll be adding our own assets to this, we don't need to bother with this entire string here. We've got a switch on the enum, and this is literally to just expose all of the variables and make it so that you guys can edit those materials and textures nice and easily from the dungeon generator itself. But for this tutorial we're going to be deleting all of this. Just be rid of that, and we will be rid of that, and we will connect these up to the correct places now, and we don't need that. And this last pin, we can remove the execution pin so that the sequence is operating without that, and we can actually move all this up as well just to tidy things up a bit, make things a little bit neater. And there we go. And it's much easier to see what's going on like this too. So we want to change the assets. So all we do is we go into each of these up here. We've got the door, the floor, the wall, inner corners and outer corners. Now for the door, we're going to use the door for the back rooms. It's already using the correct materials, that's nice. For the floor, we want to search for the floor for the back rooms. There we go, floor ceiling. Because because the ceiling is attached to that too. For the walls, we want to search for the backroom's walls again. And for the inner and outer corners, I'm just going to use the same column. If I can find it. What did I name that? So we want... There we go. And for the outer corner, the same again. That asset there. Now, this is probably going to break things because we need to check that the rotation that these assets have been imported in is correct. So I'll be checking that now. Okay, so I'll minimise this. And everything is broken. But that's okay. So to start with, we want to get the dungeon generator. And let's just have a quick look inside here. Yeah. So the scale is too large for this. So we want to go to the scale and knock it down to 200. And now everything fits as it should do. But we've got an issue with the walls. So let's work out if we can find where that's going wrong. Okay, so it's going to be in the rotation of the meshes. Oh, wrong meshes. Backrooms, here we are. So the doors will want re-importing, the columns not so much, but the walls are going to be causing us issues too. And what we're going to do is, if I can find it, transform, import rotation. So just bear with me one moment and I'll work out which of these I'm supposed to adjust. Okay, so again now I've found the ideal settings. I've separated the columns into inner and outer corners, so I've just imported another one of those meshes. And for the inner corner, we've got the Z rotation at 90 degrees. The outer corner, we don't have any rotation set to it, it's in a good position. For the wall, we've re-imported at 90 degrees and we're just using the re-import base mesh for re-importing. And for the doorways, I just need to check on the doors actually to see if they sit, but we'll find that in just a moment. But just so that you can see what's going on here now, guys, we've got the yellow rooms starting to take shape. Here we are. Now it's likely that the collision won't be set very well on... here we go, we've got a doorway here, so let's look what's going on. So we're going on like a minus 90 on that, so let's just pull back over into here and we will find the transform rotation, and we want that at minus 90 degrees. Re-import the base mesh, just minimise this. Oh no, that's not right, so we want it at positive 90. There we go. Is it? No? Import the base mesh. That's better. And there we have it, the doorways sit as they should now too. And there you have it. Nice and easy to import in. So we want to mess with the floor and ceiling now to make sure that the collision's correct, because when you connect a floor and a ceiling like this, usually the space in the middle of it is collidable. It's got a collision box for it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to remove the collision for this, and we're going to add a box simplified collision, going to select this and we're going to scale it right down like that and move this onto the floor, and then we're going to take a copy of that by holding Alt and dragging it out and take that up to the ceiling, and now we have collision for the floor and ceiling. We'll hit a save, we'll minimise. I'm probably going to want to adjust the lighting in here a little bit. So if we come down to the light settings, where are we? Light settings here, and we want directional light colour, something a bit more yellowish, I think. There we go. Fog colour, again, we want something with a bit more of a yellowish hue, maybe even brownish, just to give it that dark, eerie feel. Touch more this way, and we'll reduce the intensity there as well. Let's set it to maybe 0.6, just so it's not quite as heavy on the player. And we can set these assets to no longer cast a shadow. Of course, I was looking in the wrong place. So for each of these, we're just going to set the cast shadow to false. Now it's much lighter in here. I mean, we don't get the full effect from the shadows, but we can see a little better, and it entirely depends on the project that you're looking to make. And that's how you import your own assets into the Procedural Dungeon Generator. If we hit test up here, just play it in the viewport, we'll have our third-person character. The game catches up, there we go, we'll have our third-person character able to run around the dungeon. And again, for the doorways, this is a problem with collision. We just need to add the simplified collision. So we can just do that now. So remove the collision. We'll add a box simplified. I'm just going to shrink that down. Something like that should be fine. Okay, and we'll copy that again using the Alt click drag, and now we've got collision for either side of the door. So if we close this again and we'll retest, we should be able to walk through the doors now. Yep, nice and easy, that's what we want. So, the next thing to look at is I've been asked about importing a first-person character, and that's really not too difficult to do. So what we're going to do is zoom out a bit so we can see the back rooms in all its glory, and we are going to jump back to content and go into the little add symbol in the content browser, and under here we want to add feature or content pack. And in here we want to select first person and add to project. Give it a moment to do that. There we go. Now we can close this, and as you can see we've got inside content now first person along with the blueprints. We've got the first person character and the first person game mode. So we're going to jump over to world settings here, and we're going to game mode override to BP first person game mode, and theoretically that game mode should already be set up with the first person character. player controller class, BP first person player controller, yeah, and default pawn class, BP first person character. So in theory now we should be able to just close this down, hit play, and we're now in first person. Just give it a moment, there we go. We're now in first person, and it's as easy as that, just manipulating your code to create the mechanics that you want to from there. If you have any other questions about this generation, oh, we've got items spawning over here, didn't turn that off. If you've got any questions about this generator, anything that you can do with help with, feel free to reach out. You can leave a comment below, or you could send a message through my website. Either way, feel free to get in touch, and I'm happy to help as soon as I get the chance to do so. And that's about everything that I have to cover in this tutorial. I hope this has been helpful, at least to some of you, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. This has been a Nebula Skull tutorial on Unreal Engine. Thank you very much for watching.